Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, so in this video, I would like to continue as a part two, trying to fine tune what we think may be Wendi Adelson's exact liability, okay, for Dan Markel's murder. Now, the first thing I want to say, okay, I got a lot of comments on the very last video, and I get the idea I didn't do a very good job, all right. Basically, let me confess one thing, and this is important. Okay, I do work in criminal defense, okay, and I do work with attorneys, and I got my law degree more than 20 years ago. Okay, and I'll admit that one of my weaknesses, okay, one of my weaknesses when I work on any criminal case is that I do tend to sort of absorb all the information sort of intuitively, okay, and I do allow myself, okay, to do very, very sloppy, rough draft thinking. Okay, I like to do a lot of stream of consciousness. I like to do a lot of like brainstorming, just free, very loose, very sloppy brainstorming. And then what I do when I actually have to write like an appeal, or I actually have to develop like a strategy for a trial or a defense strategy, once I get my sloppy thoughts out of the way, then I go back to the specific evidence and I sort of fine tune it. Okay, so I do have kind of a rough and sloppy way of approaching how I develop my thought around a case. But I will say this: I do think it's important sometimes it's important to sort of unplug from the specifics and just let your gut sort of just digest just everything as a whole without getting too specific. I do think it's important to sort of detach from all the specifics and just have some free thinking, because I think the intuition is very powerful. And I think sometimes we get too rigid and we get too attached, either to things that we want to have happen. I think a lot of us want her to be completely guilty, not just as an accessory, but as an actual conspirator. All right. And you don't want to have your fingers on the scale because you want something. Okay. You want to be able to have a neutral, sort of logical approach to everything. And believe me, in the end, okay, I'll admit, all right, I think this is important. What was probably not communicated in my last video is that I do believe that the Adelsons are completely responsible, okay, for Dan Markel's murder. I think the whole idea for killing him, I think, originated in the Adelsons. I think they're the ones that put it out into the world that they wanted him killed. We'll never know the exact mechanics of how the kill was ordered, okay, because I believe that Katie Magbanowa, okay, I believe Katie just is not capable of telling the whole truth. I just don't think she's capable. Okay. I did look again at her testimony, and I do think there's a lot to be taken from what she said. Okay. And I think there's a lot of information that she was giving. Okay. But I just don't trust her to give the full story of how she was told, how she was sort of given the opportunity, and then how much of a role she actually played in orchestrating Dan Markel's murder. Okay, now that said, all right, that said, I do think the Adelsons probably played way more of a role than I think what even the evidence suggests. Okay, the evidence, I think the Adelsons were very careful to sort of limit how much they would appear to be directly connected to the direct orchestration of the actual two hitmen. Okay, that would be Sigfrido and Luis. I don't think Charlie Adelson actually knew exactly for sure whether Sigfrido was one of the members of the hit team. I think he may have had an idea. I don't think he was for sure. I think he let Katie handle that. And I'm pretty sure that Charlie had no idea who Luis was. Okay, so Charlie, whatever, he made himself feel comfortable by having a little bit of distance. I think the family, the Adelsons, I think they have that remote control kind of mentality where they want to sort of displace the actual gruesome, disgusting, immediate plans and the immediate details of how Dan would be killed. They wanted to sort of have the comfort of being at a distance. And so we have that problem where Katie really appears to be the direct coordinator. Okay. So anyway, the problem is that even if Charlie was just a little bit distanced from the immediate logistics of the killing, all right, he's still close enough to Katie, and it's clear that he's giving Katie a lot of information, all right, including giving her an envelope that she doesn't read, but that would be passed on to the killers, indicating who would be killed, where he lived, all that kind of stuff. So it's clear that even though Charlie took steps to be a little bit removed from the actual core logistical planning of the murder. Okay, Charlie was still close enough through Katie, and he was giving her enough sort of information inputs, you know, at various points as it was getting closer to the actual killing. Okay, that even though he's a little bit removed, he's still right there interacting with the actual core conspiracy. Okay, so I believe that, you know, even if parts of his, Charlie calls it the extortion defense. But what he means by extortion is that he was a little bit removed from the actual plan to kill Danny Markel. All right. So like, I'm not saying that I believe in Charlie's, I don't believe in his extortion defense. Okay. But I believe that parts of it are true in the sense that I do believe that Charlie made efforts to try to be removed from the gruesome immediacy of the actual logistics of the specific plans, you know, the actual plans to go up to Tallahassee and kill. I think he knew something was happening, but I think he sort of removed himself from the immediate supervision of the actual hitmen, okay, so that he would feel he was somewhat like not directly connected to the killing. Okay, I mean, it's not a very looking at it carefully, looking at it, you know, neutrally. That was not really very smart on his part. I think he made a big mistake by having his girlfriend be the one who would supervise the killing. Number one, I mean, that's someone too close to him. And also, I think it's very clear that as you got closer to the killing, somebody gave the hitmen sort of updated information when they were already in Tallahassee that Dan Markel would be out of town the next day and that they had to complete the killing on the 18th of July. Okay, so that's very clear that only Charlie and Wendi could be supplying that information towards the very end. Okay. And so, you know, Charlie was clearly sort of, let's say he was supervising by remote control, and Wendi had to deal with the actual interface with the actual hitman. Okay, so I'm not saying that I believe that Charlie was extorted. What I'm saying is I think he invited a situation that for him would sort of fit with his extortion defense strategy and what he might think of as an extortion situation. But no, I think Charlie was orchestrating and supervising the killing, but he was doing it through through Katie as an intermediary. And so he was creating distance. All right. Now, that distance will not affect the prosecution of Charlie because he was close enough to Katie. Right. But my problem is that Wendi is another step removed. Okay. And we don't really know exactly how directly. Did I say Katie? Wendi. Wendi. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is that Charlie was close enough to Katie that even if he had some removal from the actual direct supervision of the killing, he's still close enough to be a conspirator and a directly involved in the murder. Whereas I think Wendi, she's just another step out, you know, from the immediate logistical plan to kill, right? So that Wendi is definitely supplying information. There's no doubt. I mean, I have no doubt that Wendi supplied some information to kind of like just remind the killers, you know, even though indirectly through different intermediaries, so that the killers would know that Dan would be out of town and that the killing had to take place on the 18th. So, you know, Wendi was part of that supply of information, right? Because there's no way that Charlie by himself would know exactly, you know, the comings and goings of Danny in Tallahassee and when he'd be out of town, when he wouldn't. Obviously, Wendi was giving that information. And I think Wendi had some idea, maybe not a specific idea, but she had some idea that something was in the works and that there was something going on where, you know, Danny could possibly be killed. I don't have any doubt about that because if you look at Jeff Lacasse's testimony, basically, you know, he's just too good of a witness. And it just appears very clear that Wendi had a lot of anxiety around being in Tallahassee on the 18th of July. Okay. And that she was weirdly like not letting Jeff like help fix her TV when there was an opportunity to fix her TV before the 18th of July. So you put all that together. And I think that's a lot of circumstantial evidence that shows that Wendi knew that something could happen on that date and was probably involved in clarifying indirectly to Charlie, and then through Charlie indirectly to the killers, that they had to actually get the hit done on the 18th of July. So, you know, all those things, I understand that. All right. But the problem is I think that with Charlie, you're like a step away from the actual immediate logistics of the killing. Right. But because Wendi is another step removed, okay, you have to start wondering whether she is far enough away that, just whether we like it or not, she may fall more under what I would consider to be an accessory or aiding and abetting of a murder, as opposed to directly involved in the hub of the conspiracy. In other words, the actual conspiracy is more like at the center of the wheel of the murder, whereas the spokes in the wheel, people that are assisting and aiding and abetting, they're still tied to the murder and they're still liable, but they're probably liable through what I would consider like an accessory theory, like aiding and abetting. Now, I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying you can't, if you're trying to be responsible, looking at all the strengths and weaknesses of the evidence, you have to kind of cover your butt, and you have to have some plan B so you can still get liability, right? And I just think that, at least for now, not knowing more information, not being able to, well, we also don't know all the other information that the prosecutors actually do have, that the state does have, that they haven't revealed yet, that they have chosen to hold back in Charlie's prosecution. So there may be additional evidence out there. That's fine. But at least for now, I mean, it's only responsible to have a couple of backup plans, and to understand that Wendi can be held responsible for this murder. But I just think that, at least you have to hold on to the plan B of a possibly, like, say, an accessory liability or a aiding and abetting liability. And what I'm saying is I'm not in favor of her. Okay. I mean, because I'm actually suggesting a way that she can be held responsible. All right. And I don't think if Wendi was like hiring PR people to, like, put out BS, YouTube videos, I mean, why would she want people saying that she's an accessory to a murder? I mean, I don't know. Anyway. And by the way, she may actually be fully liable as a conspirator. I just have not seen information. I haven't seen information that satisfies my doubts. So that, as I'm doing my brainstorming, I just want to make sure we're holding on to, like, obviously the plan A would be to try to get her as a solicitation of murder and maybe murder itself. But why wouldn't you also consider aiding and abetting an accessory? I mean, I don't understand why that's such a big deal. I think it's important just to have everything on the table, right? Anyway. So to try and explain, and again, I apologize in the last video. I just, I am guilty. I like to have very sloppy, rough draft thinking. I like to have real outside the box. I like to take off the jacket and take off the constraints, of what I think is the evidence. And I like to just kind of let the evidence sit in my stomach and just have sort of an intuitive brainstorming, just brainstorming, So some of my ideas are probably not, I mean, come on. I don't know what happened, and I probably do allow myself to kind of stretch a little bit some of the pieces of the case, just like a Rubik's cube. I like to kind of like play with all the different moves, and a lot of them, it's like a maze. A lot of what you play with doesn't turn out to be a good idea, but you just kind of play with all the different possibilities until you finally solve the Rubik's cube, or try to anyway. So let me just clarify that I absolutely see the Adelsons as just incredibly and surprisingly, I mean, I'm actually shocked by this crime, because I just can't believe how stupid they were, honestly. I mean, more than anything, Charlie, even if Donna thought that Charlie was really clever, I think Donna overestimated her son, Charlie. I think Donna thought that, hey, my son, he's got all these contacts with all these underworld people. He can make it happen. He's, I don't know. She must have thought he's just like a Superman or super smart. But to think that Charlie was actually allowing the supervisor of this kill in Tallahassee to actually be someone who was known to be his girlfriend. Okay. I mean, that is so stupid, because if anything goes wrong, okay, he has a direct, intimate connection to the actual supervisor of the hit. So in a sense, I have to actually wonder, and I do wonder, whether Charlie subconsciously, now it makes sense. Why is he dating all these kind of shady women and living this very irresponsible life, traveling to the Philippines, traveling to Colombia to hire, I guess they say he hired prostitutes. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, but maybe what's really going on with Charlie is maybe Charlie was chronically depressed and acting very self-destructive in his whole life. Okay. And maybe in some weird way, Charlie has kind of a self-destruction complex. Like he wanted to fuck up, or he's kind of like looking for trouble, I don't know. But I mean, I can't believe, if he really thinks he's so smart, why would he choose as the supervisor of a hit job somebody that could be directly connected to him as a known girlfriend. I mean, a lot of people knew he was connected to Katie Magbanua. So, I mean, that's the first thing. I just can't believe how stupid it was. I mean, if you really wanted to be super smart and like, if he thinks he's some kind of mafia guy, whatever, he could have been much smarter about this. But anyway, it is what it is. I can't believe it, but it is what it is. And anyway, so let me just try to go really quickly through what I see as the obvious factors that I think point to the Adelsons actually being responsible. And I mean all of them, including Harvey. Okay. The first thing is that if you look at the Jeff Lacoste testimony, okay, and I think Jeff Lacoste is probably one of the best witnesses. He's very credible. He's a little bit nervous. He's a little bit neurotic, but he is a good witness. All right. Even though he does have apparently some motive to screw over Wendi. I mean, I think he's very resentful and he doesn't really like her. But anyway, the bottom line is that, from his testimony, there are different aspects of his testimony that make very clear that Wendi seemed to have some knowledge that something would happen to Dan Markel on July 18th, 2014. Okay, that's the first thing. When Wendi was initially agreeable to going to California with Jeff to visit family, but at some point she just got super nervous about not being in Tallahassee on time, or maybe having some problem with the flights where she wouldn't be in Tallahassee to pick up her kids in the afternoon of July 18th. Okay, that's very specific. And so, there may be other explanations for that piece of evidence, but when you put it together with all the other evidence, it does create sort of like a big circumstantial problem that Wendi seemed to know that something was going to happen. Okay, so by itself, that may not be a killer. That might not be what do you call it? By itself, that piece of evidence might not be conclusive, right? Might not be conclusive. But when you put that together with other evidence, for example, the evidence that Wendi was driving around Tallahassee and she just happened to be around the crime scene tape right in the aftermath of the actual shooting. Okay, well, that by itself might just be a coincidence. But then you put all these coincidences together, and now you're starting to get what I would consider a circumstantial picture. The circumstantial evidence is starting to weigh heavily in favor of an inference that Wendi did know that something was going to happen on July 18th, and she hasn't really explained that satisfactorily. Okay, so that's a big deal. Okay, the other problem I have is that even if you take away Jeff Lacoste's allegation, he has a testimony that Wendi was very serious and said in confidentiality that Charlie had looked into all possibilities, including hiring a hitman, and she said it very serious, and it made Jeff's stomach flip, right? That there was the idea of hiring a hitman. Okay, even if you take that out, and by itself, I don't want to take any piece of evidence by itself and hang my hat on it. So leave that on the table, all right? But even just the fact that Charlie was known to joke about hiring a hitman, okay, let's just take that evidence by itself, okay? And even though Charlie tries to minimize, it was a joke in bad taste, okay, yeah, you can say it's a joke in bad taste, but first of all, let's just take that off the table. How many law professors get killed by hitmen in the United States? Okay, there's probably like hundreds and thousands of law professors in the United States. Okay, so of all these, like say thousands of people, okay, it's probably just like 1 in thousands that actually get killed by a hitman. All right, so the probability of a law professor being killed by a hitman is probably remarkably small. Okay, I mean, it's probably just by itself, that's a very rare event. Okay, but then how many times do you see a law professor killed by a hitman, okay, connected to a family that has joked about killing him with a hitman? Okay, now that would be a remarkably unlikely combination, right? So even just the jokes about a hitman combined with the highly unlikely fact, the high unlikelihood of a law professor being killed by a hitman, I mean, that is just, they say that beyond a reasonable doubt is like, they say it's like equivalent to like 95%, But in this case, if you just put those pieces of circumstantial evidence that he's killed by a hitman and that the family joked about it, that's like higher than even 99%. So right there, they look like fools trying to say it was just a joke in bad taste, because they're not taking into account that that's combined with the high unlikelihood of a law professor actually being killed by a hitman. And worse off, where did the hitman come from? They come from Seattle? Did they come from San Francisco? They come from Atlanta? No, they came from South Florida. And the person who's directing the hitman is Charlie's girlfriend. So, that's ridiculous. I mean, anyway, it's almost so ridiculous that I don't even know why we struggle to argue about it. I mean, this is like embarrassing. You know what I mean? It's so obvious. Okay. The other thing is that I put number 3 here in this factors toward guilt, that the person who was directly orchestrating the murder just happened to be Charlie's well-known to be girlfriend at the time. So that's terribly sloppy on Charlie's part. Okay. The other thing that bothers me a lot is that there is remarkably specific corroboration, okay, from non-family members, all right? And I'm specifically referring to parts of Katie Magbanawah's testimony, all right? In Katie Magbanawah's testimony, she made it very clear that, when asked whether Charlie was doing this kill as a favor to his sister, Wendi, Katie sort of put in a comment that, well, she thought it had a lot to do also with his mother, Donna, because she felt that a lot of the reason for this murder was that Donna was the one who was really suffering from Danny Markel's, just being a jerk in the divorce litigation. I mean, according to the Adelsons perceived Danny to be just being an asshole in the litigation. And then apparently, according to Katie Magbanawah, it was Donna who was really suffering and really had the need for assistance with her, the problem with her son-in-law, So you hear that, and then just out of the blue, you get this cellmate, or not a cellmate, but someone who was in jail in Tallahassee with Sigfrido. Okay, this is Nicholas Atteridge. He has since died, but he gave the police a statement, basically being very specific that Sigfrido believed that it was the mother of the dentist, meaning the mother of Charlie Adelson, who really wanted to spend money and pay money to have something done with Danny Markel. All right. So, I mean, that's remarkably specific corroboration. And now, if it just came from Katie, I wouldn't hold too much to it. But you have 2 separate people who are unconnected, and there's remarkable corroboration. So I think it's very clear that this was not just Charlie interfacing with killers. This was coming from the broader Adelson family, and that Donna seemed to have, let's say a real need to have Danny taken out. Okay. So, I mean, again, I'm just embarrassed at how stupid this plan was, how unrealistic, but I mean, it is what it is. It looks like Donna really wanted this guy killed. So, I mean, I don't know, it looks terrible to me. All right. Now, I don't know that makes Donna a specific conspirator, because again, she's one link removed from Charlie. Donna was not specifically hiring Katie. And so you have so many links in the chain that, I'm just saying, just leave on the table, some aiding and abetting, but it already looks like, the state's already committed to a theory that Donna was specifically in the conspiracy. So, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I think if they're successful in prosecuting Donna, well, that's very bad for Wendi. Okay. But, I just want to remain open and honest that the more links you have and the more you get removed from the direct, logistical plan to kill, even Charlie's a little bit removed from it. He tries to be removed of it. And I think Donna's just a little more removed. I mean, you do run into more risk of finding reasonable doubt on the conspiracy theory. And, I don't know, I can't explain why the state doesn't try to consider maybe even for Donna, like say an accessory or aiding and abetting theory. But, I'm just thinking out loud, right? Don't get angry. I mean, and by the way, I do think that Donna really wanted this done. So I'm just thinking out loud, it's what I do. I mean, I'm sorry if I piss people off. But I'm also like, I'm not saying that anybody's innocent here. I mean, I think it's very clear to me that Donna really wanted this to happen. So, I don't know what more you guys want from me. I'm allowing myself to think out loud. I don't know if is that a crime? I guess, I don't know. Anyway. Okay. The other problem, the other thing that I noticed was that even though the Adelsons are very careful in their communications, I noticed they like to speak in code. They like to avoid being very specific. And I do think that the Adelson family, I think they like to at least keep the women and the elderly people away from the specific gruesome details. All right. Where they can kind of know generally that a murder is being planned, but they're sort of protected from having, like, say, involvement in the gruesome immediate details of the killing. So I think there is some effort in the Adelson family to sort of wall people off, sort of create at least the illusion of being remote from the actual core plan to kill. But I still think that from the wiretaps, it does appear that even Harvey was not completely out of the loop as to the actual family's connection to the Dan Markel murder. So, maybe because, Harvey's older and he's kind of a nervous guy, maybe Charlie, sort of took it on himself to be like directly connected to the underworld and to Katie, and maybe, tried to sort of keep Dad sort of in a state of just knowing generalities, whatever. But I still think it just because the family is so enmeshed and so united, I think it's pretty clear that Harvey was not completely out of the loop. All right. So, it'll be interesting to see how Harvey gets connected to this. And, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much, but, I mean, we ought to at least just leave on the table the possibility of aiding and abetting accessory liability, just in case, I mean, who knows? But it'll be interesting to see how it turns out with the father as well. Finally, the actual hitmen, Sigfrido and Luis. Now, I do believe Luis's testimony, at least parts of it. Okay, and it's notable to me that when they got to Tallahassee, it seems like, at least in Luis's mind, it wasn't clear until the very end, okay, that they would actually be killing. Well, how would I say? While they were driving up to Tallahassee, I think he knew that the plan involved to kill somebody, okay? But I don't think it was clear that they had to do it on a specific day. I think they felt like they had a lot of leeway. And then some point while they're in Tallahassee, they sort of got information that it had to be done on the 18th of July, that on the next day, apparently, Danny was supposed to be out of town, okay? Now, that is terrible. That's terrible because, and I believe it. I believe that. What that means is that information had to be coming in through people other than Katie, because Katie wouldn't know the ins and outs of Dan's personal life. So information had to be injected into this conspiracy. Like, somebody had to inject information that it has to be done on the 18th. And that could only come from people who knew Danny Markel's plans and whereabouts. Okay, so that, honestly, the only reasonable inference is that Charlie was, maybe being careful not to be too specific, but definitely letting Wendi know he needed to know Dan's whereabouts, and Wendi kind of knowing what that was all about, maybe not knowing specifically. Wendi knew that she had to let Charlie know, exactly where Danny was going to be and when he was going to be out of town. And so, even if Wendi didn't know exactly for sure what was going to happen, and even though she wasn't included in the core logistics, she was led to know by Charlie that something was up and they needed to know Danny's whereabouts. And so she gave Charlie that information, knowing that it could be, connected to maybe a plan to have him killed, even though she didn't have specific knowledge of that, I don't think. Okay. And so what suggests to me is that, that Wendi and Charlie, even though they're not in the core logistics of the actual plan, they kind of know what's going on, and they're injecting midstream. They're injecting updated information as to Dan's whereabouts and getting the message across that it has to be done on a certain day. Okay, so there's just no question that really points to some kind of liability for the murder, right? So let's make no mistake. I'm not saying the Adelsons are somehow not liable. I don't know where people get that. I think it's a big problem. Okay. So let's see here. I'm obviously going to run out of time. I don't want to make this video too long, but let's see here. Moving on to the next page. I'll tell you what, I think I'm going to make this 2 parts. So I'll make a part 3. Okay. But I want to talk about, even though it looks terrible for the Adelsons, I want to be honest about some of the weaknesses in the evidence. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll make another video where I'm honest about some of the weaknesses. It doesn't mean I don't think they're guilty. I'm just saying you have to look at the strengths and weaknesses just to make a tight theory. Okay. And so you can adapt your theory to the strengths and the weaknesses, so you make the theory stronger. You know what I mean? And I'm not committed to Wendi being an accessory. I mean, I'm not committed to anything, but I just want to examine the strengths and the weaknesses of the evidence and just put it out there, you know. Anyway, so appreciate you guys watching, and obviously this needs a part 3, okay, because I just can't get it all done in half an hour. So anyway, appreciate your patience, and please, by the way, I'm not trying to hit a home run here. This is just, we're just thinking out loud. This is called brainstorming. Okay. So anyway, appreciate that. Thanks.